name, your learner's name, age, species, breed, any relevant info like that. And then we'll dive in. I also may have some demo from one or both of my cats. Right now, Bernie is feeling very chatty. So as you all are introducing yourselves, we'll see, we might do a little live demoing here. Then I'll introduce myself. And we do see all of your names, all of your notes when you sign up for Bootcamp, your names as well. But this is a great refresher for me, a way to get to know you all better and to tailor today to whatever you all need in your household with your learners. So I'm excited to dive in. What does Bernie think? So this is Bernie. He's my one-eyed guy. He has really been chatting up a storm lately. Does Bernie want play? Does Bernie want play? Yeah, Bernie, play. So notice how I'm talking to him. I'm presenting a toy. I'm moving it around. So I'm narrating as well as modeling with the buttons. Since he's hanging nearby and is feeling energetic, what he really wants is to go outside on an adventure walk. But I knew that I would not have time to do that and get him back in the house before teaching. So he is, hi, yes, Bernie, play. I see you. I see you play. So this is our compromise for now. We want to try to say yes to as many of their presses as possible. So having lots of options that are easy to say yes to helps with that. Anna, welcome to you. And Gergo here teaching Odin. Kat, welcome. Valerie and Junie, about to turn 5. Mixed lab retriever, terrier, possibly pit. Oh, let me scroll back up. Pit mix, very early stages of learning. Awesome. Great info to have. Thank you. Brianna, welcome to you. And Norman, 9, German short-haired pointer, lab mix. And Sunny, German short-haired pointer. Love it. Starting today. Fantastic. Hi, Bernie. Hi, Bernie. Bernie loves pressing his name. Some of that may be just him playing, but we want to treat every press as though it was intentional. Even if it's accidental, that's a great opportunity to reinforce what they press and to show them the outcome of the buttons is consistent no matter what. And then the buttons always mean the same thing. Good boy, Bernie, play. Irma, great to have you. We have our wonderful community coordinator. And Irma can help if you have any technical difficulties as well. And we have Calvin here with, he's our guide relations coordinator. His learner, Jason, has been chatting up a storm as well. Thrilled to have you both. Mickey and Mike, welcome to you as well. Almost 7-year-old border collie mix, Isaac, but our 14-year-old cat, Gaz, has also taken interest in the buttons. So I got my start originally with my border collie, Adora, about 4.5 years ago now. And I figured that she would be my primary presser. And then my blind cat, Jasper, kind of ran with it, took over, and they wound up each having their own boards as a result. I love it. Yeah, whoever's up for it in your household, have at it. That's great. And they can absolutely learn from each other as well. I do find that sometimes an elevated board for the cats when they're initially learning can be helpful, but it really just depends. Obviously, between a blind cat, a one-eyed cat, and then my third cat, who I've had success with at the buttons, Katie, she's napping off somewhere, but she's mostly blind. And I did teach all of them elevated so that they felt more comfortable. They weren't underfoot for, the humans or the high amount of dog traffic that I have in my house. And that just built their confidence before then moving it onto the floor. And you can see kind of the main cat board behind me that's being merged with the main rest of the used to be dog board, but everyone's board now. Let's see. Ashley with Saphira, welcome. 8, half Abyssin cat, love it. Never stops talking. We just got the buttons last week and have only started with the play button. Okay, that's great. Play is a fantastic starter button. We'll talk about maybe adding some additional ones as well, just to help them understand that different buttons mean different things. So if you have more after today and you want to expand, I say go for it. We'll talk more about all that in detail. Don't worry. Lori, welcome. Jennifer, welcome to you and your 8-year-old cat, Maine Coon mix. Lover boy. I know, I wish I knew what all Katie and Bernie are. They're just little rescue street kittens, a tuxedo and a void cat. And we have some 13-year-old Tortie Shell, love it, practicing her first button. Molly, welcome. Patricia and Freddie, 3-year-old Havanese, awesome. So you've got little dogs representing too. Lots of cats today, woohoo. And 5-year-old agility dog, love it. I've come from a sport dog world as well. New stray that never left our home and is very shy. Good to know. Yeah, and despite the very different personalities, buttons can help with all of them. And it might not be the one that you expect that takes to the buttons first, but again, they can learn from each other as long as they're not guarding the buttons from each other. We can always talk about that too. And we've got some continuing education around that. I only bring that up because that is a concern in my household with my border collie. So she's a sport dog who knows what she wants and is not shy about communicating that. Nikki said, we haven't had an intentional press from Isaac yet, 1 week in, so that makes sense. I'm sure you will get there very soon. But Gaz has pawed at them. She has limited feeling in her dominant paw, so we aren't sure if she will successfully press hard enough. And I don't know if you could see Bernie in the background there, but some cats are shoulder pressers or button floppers. Some dogs are nose pressers. Some sit on the buttons. As long as they can activate them and you aren't frustrated, and they aren't frustrated, obviously that's important too, as Bernie wanders around behind me there. Yeah, as long as you can understand them, they can activate however they want. Welcome to you and Piper. Yeah, the boot camp is going to be diving into everything. Here, let me reshare my screen. Everything to get started here. So quick housekeeping. If you have any trouble with seeing the presentation on screen, hearing me, hearing videos, Chrome or Safari tend to work best, but also just comment and Irma will be able to help you out. And on today's agenda are our introductions, which we're doing right now. Then we're going to chat through the keys to button teaching, modeling first words, and target training. This is an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions throughout in the chat. In the chat's just a little bit easier for me while we're going through initially, just so that I can tailor this again to what you all need and answer it in the most relevant part of the presentation. And then I'll share additional resources, including our continuing education options, free and otherwise. And then we have more time for Q&A if there's additional questions that come up. And let me introduce myself, and I know there's a couple more that have come through as well. My name is Morgan Krug. I'm a certified dog behavior consultant. I've been working with animals professionally for seriously just about 18 years now, which is still crazy to me how that happened. I've had success with multiple cat learners, as you've heard, and I have my most active dog learner is my border collie, Adora, but I'm excited to help you all and your learners and whatever you all need, including some that might have disabilities or other learning troubles, whatever it is, we can tailor this to you all. All right. And a little bit more about us as a company as well. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger were using buttons previously with their learners, FluentPet is the original button teaching system. Let's see. Awesome. And our mission, I was just double checking the chat that I'd caught up there. Our mission is to figure out how to teach dogs, cats, and the other animals we share this planet with how to talk or an approximation of it. And we believe that pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. So that's where you all come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learners. And the more of us who are able to progress, the faster we can figure out just how far all this can go. And if any of you are wondering how far can all this go, we think this video really helps paint a picture of what's possible. And you'll probably recognize Alexis and Bunny.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect. I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw.
In your paw?
And she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes, and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
Before she passed, she was able to request medication after an eye procedure multiple times with eyes and help, or some combination of that. And it's not all medical related. There's lots of fun examples too. One of my favorite early ones was with Scout, a Catahoula mix, who would repeatedly combine water and bone. Took us a little while to figure out what she wanted, but it was ice cubes. And so she got an ice cube button and was able to advocate for herself in that way. So it really is amazing how creative they can be, even with a limited vocabulary. All right, so for those of you who are just getting started, which sounds like there's a good portion of you here that are, that's great. That's what we want to help out with, whatever stage you're at. So very first step is going to be modeling, talking to your learners, narrating as much as possible. And if you can, try to be specific with your language. You can keep track if you want. And if you've got multiple humans in your household, trying to pay attention to what other people are already saying might help simplify as well. Because if one person calls taking the dog out to the bathroom potty, but the other person says, hurry up, that might be a little bit more challenging for them, right? So try to be consistent and choose language that's easy for you to talk about. And since modeling is how we teach our learners what these concepts mean, early on, try to pick buttons for which you can say yes to their presses. We want to capture their excitement, their enthusiasm around the board, and teach them that this is an amazing tool that they now have available to them. So we have 3 simple steps. Once you have the buttons set up, I know some of you might still be waiting on your shipment, but once they're set up, once they're recorded, you're talking to them all the time, and then you're going to press that button. Again, the more you can frequently follow through on it, the more immediately you can say yes, the better, the faster they can make those connections. And then step 2 is just follow through. So press that button, follow through on what it says, and then repeat. It's lots of repetition, especially early on, while we're helping them understand that the buttons have a consistent outcome each and every time. Let's see. Yeah, and awesome, Patricia. For now, I'm reinforcing 2 button words, outside and play. Love it. That's pretty much what I started with for my border collie. So here's the words, and also talking to him much more and engaging him a lot by words. That's fantastic. Yeah, and for any of you who speak multiple languages, that's also fantastic. You can pick and choose depending on what they hear the most, or you can alter your language, how you talk to them a little bit, and avoid homonyms. I know Calvin likes to tell the story of realizing that mad and dad sounded too similar for Jason's board, and so wound up re-recording to Calvin and mad instead, if I'm remembering correctly there. Yeah, so pick and choose, and you can always make adjustments too. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes you dive in and then you realize, oh, maybe I need to make an adjustment. That's okay. We've all been there. And I feel like at this point, change is inevitable with the board, especially when we start to think of it as, potentially a lifelong tool and a lifelong communication skill. All right, so what does this actually look like in our day-to-day? I have a video for you with Kelly and her learner, Delmer. This is the first 24 hours that they had buttons down in their household. So know that she's talking to them all throughout, but this is just a clip of, or a bunch of clips put together of her pressing the button, and know that she's following through as well.
Puzzle. Outside, 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 puzzle. Outside, pet, puzzle. Outside, outside, pet, puzzle. Puzzle.
Yes, puzzle.
Beautiful
More puzzle?
accidental dress.
Puzzle. Puzzle. Outside, 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 puzzle. Outside, puzzle. Outside, outside, outside.
All right, so to reiterate, accidental presses absolutely count. They are excellent learning opportunities and ways for your learners to realize that they can press and elicit outcomes. It's not just us pressing the buttons. And lots of repetition. Set yourselves up for success by choosing things that are easy for you to say yes to, and ideally say yes to 10 to 15 times either throughout the day or just when you're home and around the board. Setting up nearby, hanging out around the board can be a useful way of incentivizing your learners to come over and hang out, and for you to be able to immediately jump up and respond and reinforce their presses as well. So thinking about a central location that's easy for you to model and get to, and that's easy for your learner to get to. And ideally, a lot of them like to watch us while they're pressing as well. So thinking about, where can I put this that's not too out of sight, that's not directly up against a wall. It really just depends on your learner, though. Yeah, there's general best practices that we're going to be talking about today, but they are still, of course, individuals. And if at any point I say something and you're like, that doesn't sound like it's going to work for us, or we did the opposite and it worked great, fantastic. I am not here to tell you you're doing anything wrong. I'm just here to help figure out what applies for your learner, for your household, and we can work together from there. And I can talk about buttons all day, and I love troubleshooting. So you're not going to frustrate me if you want us to dive into the nitty gritty and figure out what's going to work for you. Okay. So in addition to modeling frequently, either all throughout the day or just whenever you're around and can be around the board, being able to do some rapid modeling, pressing a button and then following through, that can help pair them together, connect the dots really quickly for our learners as well. So rapid modeling can be with anything that's easy for you to reinforce quickly. In this case, it's a food button. This is from our food modeling challenge that we had back in February, where we asked people to just spend 30, 60 seconds pressing the button, following through. You could do this with play as well, but since food is consumable, that gets them to do the repetition piece a little bit more. So here's Kelly working with a different learner, Nushka, with a snack button. And snack is just so that it's not a full meal. You can use eat as a general option too. We'll talk about general versus specific buttons in just a minute. I see that. Great question, Nikki. And so notice Kelly's also pressing the snack button with the treat, with the piece of kibble there, so that it's really driving home. The button equals the food. It's smelling like the food. Kelly's throwing the reward a little bit away so that Nushka's then reorienting to Kelly, to the button, and getting reinforced for coming back. And then with time, Kelly would then stop and wait a second, and Nushka would start to nose or paw or be like, how do I activate this button? I want this to keep going. So doing some rapid modeling, rapid pairing can drive home quickly that the button equals a certain outcome as well. Yeah, so choosing first buttons and words. How do we pick what is going to work for them? And I see your wonderful questions coming through. Don't worry, we'll talk about all of this. We want to be setting ourselves up for success. This is where 2 or 3 buttons is helpful to help them realize that different buttons mean different things, to give us different opportunities to model different outcomes for them. And ideally, our starting buttons should be motivating and meaningful to your individual learner, easy and convenient for you to model immediately and say yes to, and concrete or actionable, easy for you to demonstrate, because the soundboard itself is an abstract tool that they're learning how to use. So if we take an abstract tool and an abstract concept and try to teach them at the same time, it can slow us down. It can be more difficult than it needs to be. So taking something easy, concrete, actionable, even if it's not something that has quite as much long-term use potentially, just to drive it home, and then you can always adjust things down the line. And so that's where something like a general play might work really well. I know I started with the kittens, now cats, with eat, pets, and play as their 3 starter buttons. I began with a general play for them because they were into pretty much all the toys that I presented them, all the types of play as kittens. Now they kind of have their favorites. But with my border collie, Adora, I started with ball specifically because ball is life. And I have been able to go from the general button to specific and vice versa. If you start specific, you can always be verbally modeling more general. So to the excellent question of, should we separate something like outside from potty? Typically, starting off, I do generally begin with the more like overarching umbrella word of outside, because then they can use that to request potty outside, to request play outside, to, search for food outside, like a walk. There's different activities under that umbrella of outside, so you have more opportunities to model. But if you know that potty is something incredibly motivating for your learner, and that's something that they've struggled to tell you via body language alone, or you're in the throes of potty training and you think it would be really helpful for them, by all means, maybe potty is the better choice for your household. And then you can go to the general outside later on. And outside is a really common starting button, but don't feel pressured to start with it either. It doesn't always fit best for your household. If you've got an indoor only learner, obviously it's not going to be as motivating, but we were just discussing actually this morning that I should probably add something like an open window button for my cats. They are allowed outside, but only with supervision. And this morning it was raining. It's been getting hotter. There's a lot of pollen, so all the windows were closed. And there was one that was cracked, and the cats were guarding the space from each other a little bit. So having an option to ask for an open window button, or an open window via button, could be incredibly motivating for them. Hi, kitty cat. Hi. You wake up from your nap? Oh, Katie wants to play. Okay. Katie wants play now. So this is where having something nearby that you can reinforce with. Normally our toy bins don't live in the kind of dining room / kitchen area that I'm in right now, but that is the most convenient location for the buttons. So I've brought a lot of toys over as a result. Kitty cat want to play? Here you go, babe. You want to play different? Let's see. And we also have on our examples here the eat button. And this is incredibly motivating for a lot of our learners. And we have the very apt question of, what if you teach snack and they turn into a monster? You are not alone in that concern. And Katie's like, you know what? I do actually want food instead of to play, which makes sense because she was not engaging. So I'm going to, as I reinforce her, go full screen and talk about our food buttons, because this is a very common concern. And in fact, the first set of buttons that I received 4.5 years ago came with literature that explicitly said, don't start with a food button. At the time, we were worried that they would fixate, that they would become obsessive, only be interested in food buttons, and not, press for the sake of communication, just press as a trick. But what we found with more time and experience, and across thousands of households now, is that food buttons are so incredibly reinforcing for many, many of our learners that they will find ways to ask for food even if they don't have a food button. So giving them an appropriate outlet can be really helpful. Also, it becomes less valuable the more we're able to say yes to it. Yeah, pets. Hi, you want your kibble wet food? Here you go. And you want your scoop? Yeah, you do want scoop? Okay. She was about to climb up herself, and then she was like, actually, I want an escort. I give the example often of, and this is why it's so important to say yes as much as we possibly can. If you knew that when you sat down at a slot machine, it was going to pay out the jackpot every single time, you were going to win something. Maybe it would be different amounts. Maybe it would be different, millions of dollars that you got each time. But if you knew you were going to win almost every time, eventually you'd be like, wow, I have so much cash. I got to eat. I need to go to the bathroom. There are other needs that I want met, especially if you knew that you could come back, that slot machine would be open, available, and would still pay out. Other things would become more valuable. So that's what we're hoping to kind of work on with the food button, is it's giving them an appropriate outlet to communicate a want, a need, a desire. And I did begin with a general eat for my cats, which has now, as you've heard, been broken down into wet food, kibble, pumpkin. We've got a separate training button. We have a puzzle button. Puzzle is a great option for them to slowly work through food. If you aren't able to say yes to every single one of their eat or snack presses or something like that, totally understandable. That's where something like puzzle that you could put inside of like a kibble mousey or some other food dispensing toy for cats or dogs or whoever your learner is, that can buy you time, give them an activity to do, something that you can say yes to without frustrating them and without it being as labor intensive for you. But again, this is where you know your learner and your household best. If there is resource guarding that you're worried about amongst your learners, if one of them's on a restricted diet, like protein wise, if they're already supposed to be eating less, then adding a button is probably for food is probably not going to do much more than frustrate you both. But if you can say yes to, even like I've gotten to the point where I've broken a kibble in half, so I'm still following through saying yes to their presses. But it's just a bit of diminishing returns at that point. And despite having the food buttons, my one cat, Bernie, he might request twice a day max. He might request only once a day because he usually is happy to finish whatever is already out. But Katie has very specific menu requests. She wants food 5 or 6 times a day. She wants fresh food. She wants pumpkin mixed in. And she's able to tell me that via buttons. Mom, help. Mom, help scoop. Come here. Yes, mom, help. Mom, help. So there's an example of modeling help. She couldn't get down her ramp without stepping on her brother. She couldn't quite see where her brother was. So that's why I offered the help. So it doesn't have to be anything super like big deal health wise either when you're modeling the help button. It can be as simple as assisting them with an itch that they're trying to get that you might be able to do more conveniently with your primate hands. All right, let's see. We'll talk more about establishing boundaries on our slides in just a moment here too. But hopefully that's helpful to think about. Reshare my screen, and Katie gave us a nice opportunity there. And so notice how she ate. She ate just a little bit. Now she's over napping or getting ready to nap in a box by the window with Bernie. Let's see. And Patricia said he's used the hanging bell to let me know he wants to go outside, but he gets frustrated because he also uses it to get my attention for play or food. I'm a bit confused how to integrate or transition. Yeah, excellent question. So I would leave the hanging bell. We don't want to be removing any options for communication, and especially since he already uses it, try to just reinforce that for outside. But if you notice it for general attention seeking that he's ringing the bell, that's when I might go over to the board and press something like the play or the food. Since you know that those are what's already trying to be communicated, give other options, more specific options via the buttons for those. But we have seen where a lot of folks remove the button, or excuse me, the bells, and then they're really frustrated. And I almost put that as the same as if, they're used to whining by the door or scratching by the door or coming up to you and pawing your leg to tell you that they need to go out. We're still honoring that. We're still listening to all of their modes of communication. We might not say yes to everything, of course. We're only human, and it might not be appropriate to tell them yes, depending on what they're asking for. But we're still honoring that. And if my learners are sitting by the door whining and telling me that they need to potty, that's a full sentence. I'm not asking them to come over to the board. I'm not even modeling in that moment. I might just verbally say like, oh, you need to go out and potty? Let's go. If there's urgency, that's not the time to be training or teaching, right? Just meet the needs. That's the number one thing. So leaving the potty bells to make sure that that need is met. And then when you see, again, using the potty bells and expecting a different outcome, that's when I would maybe start modeling at the buttons instead on your way to following through on their requests. Yeah. And yeah, so similar, anytime you're not near the board, at least narrating. And there's times when it would be very frustrating for my learners if I stopped what we were doing and was like, let's go over to the soundboard. So instead, yeah, there's times where I'm honoring their vocalizations, their body language, that sort of thing. Yes, and so Patricia, I would hold off on the outside button in your case. It wouldn't hurt to put a duplicate outside button on the board, but it's up to you. You might get a little bit more mileage out of a different third button on the soundboard, in addition to your play and food or whatever you decide there. Yeah, so that's where pets or scritches. Brush is a really common one for cats in particular. Some kind of physical affection button is another popular one, maybe choosing from that category. That can be helpful. She says, so I have pets and I will add eat and, or I play, excuse me, and I will add eat and pets. Should they be on separate mats? Should I put the eat one in the kitchen, play is in the living room? Excellent question. Yeah, so it's up to you. There's been lots of folks who have started with the buttons spread out and had success, and it is easier on us initially to model with them spread out. The problem is, once we start combining things, once they start combining things, and once we get to our abstract concepts, there's not always a physical representation of the button that, or of the concept that we can put a button next to. So think about like a more or an outside button, or excuse me, a more or all done, or yes, no, now, later, kind of our abstract concepts listed at the top here. More can go with eat, with play, with pets. So that's where that central board that you can start to combine concepts, modeling, and for them to combine things tends to be best. If you do start with them spread out, again, there's nothing wrong with that. It just tends to set some learners back when we then move them into a central location. And if that's your end goal anyway, starting with it there tends to work best. But I will say you can also set up, your 3 buttons, 3 hex tiles, or 2 or 3 hex tiles, whatever works for you. I try not to add more than 2 buttons per hex tile when we're starting off, just so that they're not overwhelmed by the button, the button choices. It's easy for them to get their paw or nose or whatever body part they're pressing with, for them to access it without too many accidental presses or frustrating accidental presses. But you can also just take your mini board and bring it with you until you decide where it's going to live. So maybe you drag it over to the play button, or to the play, the toy bin, and press the play button there. Maybe you bring it with and set it by the door when you're working on in and out. Yeah, totally up to you. Somewhere that's easy for your learner to get to, easy for you to model, and a way for them to watch us for our reactions while they're pressing. For those who do receive visual input, that tends to be best practice for them. Yeah, excellent question. I'm very glad that you asked. I normally try to go over that, and I had not yet today. Yeah, and Jennifer, you asked the same thing. I knew that it was on there, and I just had not yet gotten to it. Excellent question. And Ashley said that makes sense about finding a way to ask for food. My cat will just scream in a very high-pitched manner, and that's how I'll know. Yes, the singing their song of the people. You're so funny. All right, so let's continue to talk about abstract concepts a little bit, because this is where eventually it's a good problem to have, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you're like, I can't say yes to all these presses, whether it's a food press or outside, maybe the weather's not great. Eventually it gets to the point where, yeah, you're not going to follow through on everything. And that's okay. We still want to say yes as much as possible. That's what the board is for, right? For them to communicate. But there's times when we need to tell them something like all done, or no, or later. So notice that these are all listed in pairs. The idea there is that you can model them in contrast or in opposition to each other to make it a little bit easier for them to understand. So when you think about like, yes, more eat now, and you're filling more kibble in their bowl. Yes, more outside, and you're going outside together. Now in the moment while it's happening, that's a lot more actionable, a lot more understandable than outside all done. No, we can go later. And then nothing happens. That's a lot more challenging for them to understand. So this is where picking one of these abstract pairs to start off with can be really helpful. And know that this is where you can always change things up. I started with more and all done for my border collie Adora, because with ball being life, you better believe that she was pressing that too much for me to follow through on within a couple days. So I then was like, oh my gosh, we got to put the brakes on gently a little bit here, set some boundaries without frustrating her, demotivating her from using the board. And I realized that unfortunately, all done was too much of a shutdown for her. As I had previously taught it, all done was the end of fun. It was the end of a training session, end of an agility run. That was not a fun thing for her. So it wound up frustrating her more. And I realized very quickly thereafter that actually now and later were my better choices. So I changed more and all done to now and later for her board. And later means, as I've taught it to her, yes, just not right now. And that's far more acceptable for my frustrated border collie. So this is where you can always play around with these things. Pay attention to the language you're using. But even those of us who have meticulously planned, or even if it's literally your job to teach this, there are adjustments that we all make. So no pressure to get it perfect the first time. Just anytime you are making an adjustment to the board, re-recording a button, changing the layout, the categories, anything like that, just go slow, model a ton, press those differences, show your learners the adjustments, and I like to give them the option to be present as well. I don't want them waking up from a nap and coming over and being like, whoa, everything is different, or come in from playing outside and the buttons are all in a different spot. That's really hard for them. So give them the option, at least, to be present while changes are being made. Yeah, and so Anna has a great question that goes with that. Is the position/placement, the icon, or the sound of the button most important when teaching the first ones? And should we group them according to meaning or topics, to food and snack on the same hexagon, and so on? Totally up to you. I will tell you, for my blind cat, it was chronological. It was as I added them, because I felt like for her, making too many adjustments when she had such a strict motor map, like a mental map memorized of where things were, I didn't want to make a bunch of adjustments for her. But for my border collie, she loves board changes. I think she enjoys the challenge. There's times when it seemed like she almost wanted them in different categories. And so it's up to you. This is where I like to pay attention ahead of time to the language that I'm using, not only to start picking out some abstract pairs. So things like safe and concerned are another abstract pair for emotions that are good. A positive emotion like happy, with a negative emotion sad. And so like I do have emotions on hex tiles together. I have names on hex tiles together, kind of next to each other. And for us, we have entire islands because of the size of our board at this point. So this is just our person option. And the mom button, you can see, so I've got some textures on ours so that my low vision learners can feel the difference. And I did have kind of a kitty braille system set up for my blind cat Jasper. But I'll tell you, even though I could watch her feel the difference between the buttons, there was so much smell. There's a lot of head dipping, sniffing to orient. And we've seen that with a lot of fully sighted cats and fully sighted dogs too. They're better attuned to distance, movement, that contrast, as opposed to very up close vision. That's just not how they evolved. It's less of a priority for them with their other senses. So a lot of them will use smell to differentiate between the buttons. So that's where we don't want to use overly harsh cleaners or anything either. Ideally, I mean, obviously you got to do what you got to do sometimes, but I try to be cognizant of that, particularly with my low vision learners, knowing that they're using other senses to kind of navigate in between. So yeah, that's why we don't want to be making too many adjustments, but we can always be adjusting things. It's primarily for all of our learners seemingly just a memorized motor map. Think about how you learn how to type on a keyboard. At first, we're going very slow, looking at each key, touching, one at a time. But with time, practice, and patience, you can go much faster. You can pick up your whole laptop, move it wherever, and your keyboard's going to be the same. That's what we want to work up to the level of proficiency with their soundboard, and why rearranging all the keys, especially if somebody just handed you a keyboard and was like, surprise, I rearranged all your keys for you. That would be really frustrating. But there's also plenty of people, think of court stenographers, things like that, who know how to type on multiple keyboards. We've seen that a lot with learners as well. My blind cat had her elevated countertop board that had all of her kitty braille on it that she used, but she would use easily a third of the main board on the floor as well. The relevant ones that she didn't have up on her board, she was happy to use as well. Once she realized the dog board had outside, before I added one to her, she was like, time to learn this. It's amazing. And we've seen learners go visit other friends in other households, and they'll learn how to use other animals' soundboards as well. It just takes modeling, repetition, and some will learn to experiment. Some will learn, oh, I can just push this button, listen for the outcome, watch what happens, and then very quickly memorize what each button equals. So, long answer, but I get very excited about all these things. Totally up to you. I like a general category, so like more and all done are next to each other. All of our food buttons are on one cat hex tile, but I also have built-in redundancies. I mentioned that I have resource guarders. I have cats who will guard space, some food, some toys. I have dogs who will also guard all of the above. Both dogs will guard. So I have multiple play buttons, multiple mom buttons, multiple food buttons. So there's some that are not as nicely categorized, but the learners can use it no problem. And that way it's just eliminating competition. So if one wants to request, something of me, somebody can be doing it at the same time without them getting frustrated. Yeah, and Patricia asks, he's trained early using his nose touch for targeting. Could I just get him going with his nose instead of a paw? Absolutely. And then it'll be easier for them to orient by smell if they are the type that wants to navigate that way. Yeah, excellent question. Yes, which we will talk about target training in just a moment here. Let me reshare my screen. I think we covered just about everything here. Yeah, so start thinking about some nice categories. And above all, we want to just be thinking about things that we can say yes to. Because if we're just putting a more and all done or even a now and later on the board, and they want our attention, they want something to do, just telling them later isn't going to solve the problem, right? So that's where something like puzzle, some more independent activities that you can put on the board, or lower work activities for us can be great options too. Okay, target training. So you're modeling consistently, you've chosen motivating buttons, but they're not yet pressing independently. That's okay. This is where target training can help them connect the dots, as well as build confidence and a sense of agency. Not all of them are going to need target training. This is just if it seems like they're not figuring out how to press on their own. And for those of you like Patricia, who have already worked on something like a high five, a nose touch, or even shake paw, something like that, the first video that's linked by Irma there is with Alexis and Bunny, a shortcut from their video. You can totally pop that button out of the hex tile, put it in the palm of your hand. If they've got a high five, tell them to give you a high five. In this case, I pulled out the play button, and I would then pick up a toy and engage with my learner in that way, whether it's a wand toy, a feather toy, a ball for my dog, whichever. If it's a nose touch that they know how to do, same thing. Put it in the palm of your hand, cue them to give you that nose touch, and then follow through. And again, this can be with outside, this can be with food, whatever's motivating to them. So same thing, shake, paw. Just know that it is going to take time to work it back into the hex tile. The picture looks different to them, right? In our hand versus on the floor. So that makes sense. But that can be a really great shortcut. The next two videos are cat specific, great for small dogs as well though, and work on the weight shift to press. A lot of our learners need practice with precision, and I see the great question, how do we teach precision with touching? She's in very early stages, but seems to try moving her paw in the general direction, swiping near and above, but is not always looking to see where she's hitting. Yeah, and great that you've already observed that. We see that a lot, and especially with cats, or again, just younger learners too, or ones who need help with eye paw or eye nose coordination. So continue practicing one of the versions of target training there, but when you see them batting at the side, when you see them nosing around it or even just staring it down, trying to figure out how to activate. When in doubt, help them out. That way they're not getting frustrated, they're not flailing around. The more frustrated they get, the more kind of frantic and the less precise they tend to be as well. So when in doubt, help them out. Just immediately go in. You see them swiping, go ahead and press for them. And if you can time it so that you're hitting right when they're attempting to, and you can get the button to move underneath of their paw while they're pressing, or their nose while they're attempting to press, then they're going to get that tactile feedback right away. The movement of the button, it vibrating if it's the kind that has the speaker in it, it lighting up if it's a connect button that has the separate speaker. So just giving them that connection can really help, as well as practicing both your nose and paw targeting with that first video that we shared, the one with Alexis and Buddy, just continuing to practice that precision. And if they're anything like my border collie, what our biggest challenge was when she was calm, she was very precise, had no problem. But as soon as she started to get amped up, her level of accuracy went down significantly. So some of it's also just practicing at different levels of excitement. And it comes with time. Being cognizant of not putting too many buttons too close to each other as well. You can kind of see on just the island closest to me here of hex tiles how we've got a lot of gaps in between. This is because of my very exuberant border collie. If it were just my cat's board, I would have things far more filled in than that. So that's where observing your learner's pressing style can help give you clues as to setting them up for success, how close the buttons are. And even if you start with them further apart in the hex tile, you can always fill them in more as they become more advanced and a bit more precise with their presses. But that does take time. And again, that's where, having that bit of disconnect where their vision just is not as good up close, it makes sense that would be a struggle for them. It doesn't mean that, that you're doing something wrong or that they're less coordinated or something. That is a challenge for a lot of them. All right, let me share a few resources with you all, and then we'll dive into any additional questions that you all have. All right, so we've got some great free resources for you. Within this community itself, community.fluent.pet, that a lot of you are watching Bootcamp on right now, we have so much great information, like more than 4.5 years worth on here. Underneath of Start Button Teaching, we've got step-by-step, in-depth information if you're the type who wants to dive in that way. We also have FAQs, 41 of them to be precise so far. So if there's anything that you want to troubleshoot, the middle of the night, something like that, this might be helpful. You can always post on the forum as well. We've got people around the world who love talking about buttons on here. And if you dig around, you can find so much great info too. Under Events Button Bootcamp, this is where, if it would be helpful for you to attend another one, if it would be helpful for a family member to attend, a household member, something like that, send them our way. We'd love to have them attend. You can also switch at the top here, upcoming to past, and you'll be able to find a recording from today that will be up. Well, it's already up right now, even though we're not done. It will be up in full once we're done today. I'm just going over already, as you can hear. Underneath of our mentorship call tab, the next one down, thrilled about this. Some of you all may want to hop over to this right after. We've got Janine, one of our guides, who will be leading a call that you can be as active on if you want, or just listening in, depending on what you're up for. But just RSVP, hop on. It's a free call, usually about 45 minutes long. There's some info presented, as well as troubleshooting and just talking through somebody who's been there. We've got Surviving the Spamming Stage this evening for anybody who is already having learners that are pressing a lot. If you want more help picking first words, we've got that one next week. We've got ones specifically on target training, and these are all taught by different great guides, some cat-specific ones. I'll let you all scroll through. Yes, RSVP, would love to have you. We try to have a variety of different days and times for everybody in different time zones and different schedules. Under resources, this is where you can find Self-Study Learning Center. There's paw targeting tutorials that were shared in the chat as well. Here's a soundboard planning tool. If you're somebody who likes to have an idea of where things are going, you've got that for your use, and so many great resources that you can scroll through and peruse. A lot of these folks are mentor leaders and instructors as well. Discussion, updates, info here, more great info. Chat, you can share quick updates, wins, struggles, whatever you need. And under discussion, one last thing I want to highlight, though everything here is great, including button exchange. If you want to swap buttons with anybody or go in on an order together, something like that, but show off your soundboard. If you're looking for inspiration, there are as many soundboards as there are households. I love that Tara had the idea to do a angled vertical space for her dog. So rather than just wall mount, she's got a little bit of the angle on the plexiglass here. So cool. Common kind of is this cockpit style that you can see here. And here's that soundboard planning tool in action. One thing that I love to highlight as well is Sasha's board. Even though it's kind of classic cockpit style here, if her learners want to watch her while pressing, it's in a nice corner, tucked, space saving, not getting stepped on as much or a tripping hazard for the whole household, but there's still enough room for her learners to get behind the soundboard and stand here and watch her while pressing. So I love that example. And then you can get creative about pathways if you want. I've got a yoga mat underneath of our islands to help. But this is for a senior cat who has cancer. So they're all about comfort. Got a nice walkway, napping zones. A lot of cats and a lot of dogs too like to nap on or near the soundboard. And so this way a Ducat can just wake up, stretch, and press what she wants and go about her day. All right. So hopefully that's helpful for finding additional assistance. And we also have the Let's Get Them Pressing course. So with the Let's Get Them Pressing course, this next one starts, I think, at the end of the month. This is taught by Diane with Neurodog Training, and Alexis and with Bunny are guest instructors as well. There is a 25% off coupon code if interested. So that is linked in the chat. Thank you, Irma. And Irma linked some of the great tools as well there. Thank you. And so the course, there's live coaching as well as asynchronous material, just a small group, really, really great info that's covered. Yeah, cannot recommend it enough. And I'm on there, or I'm there occasionally as well, helping out with cats and answering questions. And then if anybody's realizing that you'd like more buttons, more hex tiles, anything like that to expand or ready to go, we do have 15% off for you the next 24 hours. This is good for everything at Fluent.pet, including the Connect system. So that is linked for you if you're interested. And we're always looking to improve as well. If you have any feedback for us, please don't hesitate to let us know. All right, y'all. Thank you. Let's dive in. Let me see what else came through. And then feel free to raise your hand as well if it'd be easier to talk through anything, but I definitely see some more great questions. Jan Val asked, sometimes our dog seems to want is for me or both my husband and I to go into a room with her. I started with outside and chew to represent all food-related activities like puzzle, con, long chew, very smart. Just added an upstairs button. How soon can I add mom and dad, knowing that's typically the combination she's requesting? Yeah, especially knowing that that sounds like what's going on there and that you've already gotten some independent presses, it might be time to add mom and dad. Usually we say, they're a bit more advanced of concept, wait a bit. But when you know what your learner's interested in, let the board grow and expand based on their interests, based on what they want. Bernie, when I added the Bernie button for him, he just was so happy. He loves pressing his name. He loves using it. So while our names typically are a little bit more, beneficial, they can press for attention, a lot of them love to use their name or use other household member names to advocate for each other too. My cats have been using the buttons to request play with each other lately, which is really, really sweet. I don't know if it's in part because Katie just doesn't have the visual input on Bernie's play requests at times and can hiss and get startled. Yeah, so I would say sooner rather than later. And I'll also tell you that mom was button number 4 for Katie. Um, Started with Eat Pets and Play and very quickly realized that she was pressing eat repeatedly, not just for more food, but for attention. Because all of her needs were met, her bowls were all full, and she's staring me down and pressing eat. So I added the mom button and she was thrilled. So I think you're good to go ahead. If at any point you add buttons and you notice a setback, they're not pressing as much, they're avoiding the board, avoiding the buttons, you can always undo what you just did. I also like to take a picture of the board before making adjustments for that reason, so that it's very easy to go back and undo whatever adjustments I made if they were not to my learners' liking. If they follow up, how can you model a button with names, with cats or R's? Excellent question. So Jennifer, one of our guides and bootcamp instructors and mentor instructors, has coined a tea party. So her version is basically taking food and narrating whatever your words might be. So in my household, it would be mom eat as I take a bite. Then it would be Adora eat, Ash eat, Bernie eat, Katie eat, and narrating as each of them take turns with each other. And I know in the mentorship call tab, you can go to past as well and find recordings of the multi-learner household mentorship call. And I talk specifically about taking turns, being patient, and waiting for if you need to build up duration so that not everybody's coming at you for the food at once too. Yeah, because that can be a bit too chaotic, but I love a good controlled chaos around me with the board. As long as I'm modeling for somebody, I'm thrilled. Any additional questions while we're together, y'all? I know we've been at an hour here. I so appreciate you all. You've had so many fantastic questions already. You can definitely access the recording here, as well as other past boot camps if that would be helpful, other past mentorship calls. Thank you all so much. There is a mentorship call starting in just a couple minutes. Yeah, so if interested, you can hop over to that. And said, having these animals communicate to mean we have to talk a lot more at home. I typically live alone, and I find myself narrating, talking a lot out loud. Yes, yeah. So that's where thinking about what you want to call yourself might be helpful too. I chose mom. I've always gone by mom with my animals, slightly tongue in cheek. But I did not consider when I chose that I would be narrating everything that I do, and especially after moving. And I'm in a new neighborhood. I'm meeting my new neighbors, and I have my animals out with me, and I'm just narrating everything like mom this, mom that. I'm like, wow, I did not consider ahead of time what talking in third person would sound like. If you have other humans that you live with, then there's a bit less narration that you need to do because you'll be able to, or they'll be able to observe as you're talking to each other. And that's why Christine Hunger chose Christina at first for the button for Stella for herself, because her partner was calling her Christina, and that's what Stella knew her as. Now she has 2 kids at home. Stella probably hears mom a lot more than she hears Christina. So I wonder if now, if Christina were doing it from the beginning, if she would have chosen mom as a result. Yeah, so just different things to think about. But you can always adjust it too. Remember, Calvin started with dad and then changed it to Calvin because of that mad dad homonym. Thank you all so much for being here. Yeah. Well, interesting. Patricia said narrating has gotten him really looking at me. Something I've never done before. I explain strangers working outside, and he will stop barking and look at me as I narrate and tell him it's okay. I love that you've already seen that difference. It's made a huge difference for my learners as well. And interestingly, Dr. Amy Cook in her playway, even I think Kim Murphy as well in all of her training materials, they talk about just naming things, labeling things, and the amount of